Thanks for joining us. I'm Scott Hamlin, a council member from Ward 6. I'm joined tonight with council member Dr. Farasati of Ward 5. As most of you know, we have an ongoing, what we call a conversation series, where we take current topics discussed by the council and other places, and we attempt to inform the public and get your feedback. One of the top subjects right now has been around hazard pay for first responders. We brought this up in an attempt to get the other leaders to engage in a meaningful conversation about it. We were met with a little bit of a resistance. However, that being said, we're still pushing forward with this idea, and it's actually going to be heard Monday night at the Finance Committee. And so the purpose of this video tonight is just to provide more information on what it is, where the idea is coming from, what has transpired so far, and hopefully where it's headed. So for time's sake, we'll just get straight into it. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. In my experience, I think a video's worth even more. Therefore, the format kind of what I'm planning here is we've got some videos that we're going to display. We'll show those to you, and then we will just kind of analyze and talk about them so you can get an idea of what's being said and where this process is at. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. The first video, we'll just start from the very beginning. And in this past meeting, Dr. Farasati made a motion. The motion was to discuss with the council the idea of hazard pay. And I will just, I'll show you that video, and then we'll have Dr. Farasati tell us a little more about what he, what he proposed and what he was thinking, and see if we can get it going.
To Mr. Farasati.
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor. I would like to introduce a motion for discussion of an item under establishment of a policy authorizing hazard pay for OP's first responders. And I leave the details to be discussed if this motion gets approved. Just a little bit of a background. I think the logics behind this motion is on two important grounds. Number one is that it is quite obvious, according to the experts at different national and local level, that simply exposure is going to increase your chance of contracting the virus. And it's also quite obvious from many other jurisdictions that the first responders are at increased risk. And I would like to remind everybody that the risk of contraction of coronavirus is simply in the neighborhood of 3 times more than flu, the regular flu. And for somebody who's out there, it's definitely an increased risk. The second thing I would like to remember the council is that we just, by putting that resolution together, we basically verified that this council is in agreement with the fact that our first responders are at increased risk. And the last point of background and just attracting your attention is that we are talking, if this council authorizes this, we're going to be talking about a policy, a new policy. And I put that in the motion intentionally because, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't had such a policy before. And it is a very obvious function of this body of elected officials to discuss policies and either to approve them or reject them. So this, because it didn't exist before, I wanted to express my reasoning that therefore it's just pay attention to the fact that it's a request for discussion of a new policy, and therefore it's not something that has been categorized before under anybody's line of duty. So with that, I'm very much hopeful that the council would allow this discussion to move on. We have all received a number of communication from first responders, their families, and also the public in general, that this merits in their mind to be approved, never mind to discuss it. But I am very optimistic that you agree with the discussion to be done right away after this.
Okay, so if you saw that, I assume. Hopefully the transition, I can get a little better at that. But nonetheless, there's several things that jumped out there. You talked about a discussion. You talked about a policy. Can you explain a little more to us about what you were thinking and what exactly you were proposing there?
Yes, thank you very much, Councilman Hamlin. I appreciate your efforts. I appreciate all of the dedication you put into this. And one more time, I appreciate you bringing this item to our attention. Your connection and firsthand exposure to the needs and the requests of first responders came just the right way, basically, and at the right time. So as we saw, basically what has happened during the last couple of weeks is that we proposed twice to have an agenda item, one about reversing the pay cut for the first responders, and the second one that you just showed about establishing a hazard pay for them. So we simply requested that to be on the agenda of the City Council. And let me clarify this up forward, that it is absolutely legal and in harmony with the procedure to bring an item to the City Council and bypass the committees. As a matter of fact, in cases of emergency, in cases of some level of pressure on time, that's the mechanism which is usually used. So we did that because of the national urgency that we have, because of the fact that our first responders are stressed out and they really were under pressure with overall what's happening, and they wanted us to take action. We brought it directly to City Council, which is absolutely in harmony with the book, so to speak. The mayor on both occasions rejected to put it on the agenda. Simple rejection, no logical reason for it, and just rejection. Okay, when that happens, it becomes a non-agenda item, an additional item. A non-agenda item needs first to be voted to be discussed, basically. And I find that a procedural maneuver that the mayor did, just to basically, to simply put it in the words, to inhibit any discussion about it up front. Otherwise, if it was on the agenda, the discussion should have continued. So now we are facing a non-agenda item, okay? Therefore, we are supposed to vote if we want to discuss it or not. So the only vote that we are observing here is to discuss this item. And both on April 6th and April 20th, the vote of the council and the mayor was not even to discuss it. This let me just explain clearly. Yes, it is true that the mayor puts together the agenda for City Council and reject an item. But this is supposed to be done in a logical and basically justified manner. It's not supposed to be done that, you know, I'm just going to avoid a discussion, therefore I reject an agenda item. The second thing that I brought to the attention of the council was that this is a new policy, and policy establishment is the work of the City Council. So it's absolutely the right thing to do to discuss it at City Council. And unfortunately, we were facing with a situation that, as you will show us as we move forward, that this reasoning gets nowhere to my amazement, and there is a bunch of other not so logical reasons are going to move forward. So to this point, I am just simply, in both of us actually, are requesting a discussion on hazard pay to be allowed. We are not pushing anybody to say yes. We are not pushing anybody to say no. We are just requesting a discussion of this body of elected officials. We are requesting them basically that they would express interest to discuss it. So that's how much that clip shows.
Yes, and thank you very much for that. And we'll get into some other ones. There's still a lot more to be talked about that being a discussion item. But I'll go ahead and show earlier in the night, I think it's important to bring up that we had unanimously passed a resolution for us to legislatively support asking the federal government to provide the funding to pay our first responders and a bunch more. They had asked for a lot of stuff, but that was part of it. That got passed unanimously. So we were in agreement that they did deserve it. So being as that was the case, I asked this next question, which was a fairly simple and straightforward question. And just to give you kind of an idea of why the proposals we're making, I feel, are so important. And I'll show you that video real quick here. Let's see if I can pull this off.
Other questions, Mr. Hamlin?
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question. I guess it would be for Bill Ebel, if that's possible. I guess he's on here, or whoever can answer the question. I mean, of course, I'm thrilled to see us moving in this direction. There is some uncertainty to it. Is it enough? I don't know. And that's where the basis of my question comes in. I assume this question is to Bill, but have you considered establishing any, say, local policy to compensate our essential workers during this pandemic?
This is Bill Ebel. No, I have not.
Okay, so that one I kind of think gets a little bit at the heart of the matter, and why it's important that we have a local, meaningful discussion about what it is we can do. Like I said in that, I said that, you know, this legislation that we're supporting is, at this point, it's not even a proposed legislation. So like I mentioned there, it's iffy at best. So I think along the same lines as asking for the legislative support, it'd be, you know, it's crucial that we also look at what we can do. And it doesn't appear that is happening. So I see that as another reason that we must have this discussion. And you have anything to add to that, Dr. Farasati, before I go?
Thank you. I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, we just passed a resolution saying that our first responders deserve hazard pay if somebody else pays for it. Like, is that
right? Yeah.
What was that? Was that, and I tried, just like you, like what you said, I tried to say, listen, ethically, therefore you agree with the fact that first responders ethically and logically deserve hazard pay. So therefore, we are almost half done here. It's the right thing to do, so to speak. And I was trying to build up logically on that basis. And well, it didn't work the way we thought, did it?
No, no. You would think that the unanimous support for additional pay for first responders passing unanimously would at least—
Federal government pays.
Federal government pays would at least lead to, okay, well, let's have a discussion of what we could do locally. But in this case, obviously, that wasn't how it worked out. So we had several responses, and I'll give you an idea of what the resistance we ran up against. What we thought was just a no-brainer. Let's discuss it. One of the big misconceptions is that we had something we had to vote on that night. The way this works in committee, or it can be done at council, is we can discuss an item. We can ask staff to go back and prepare something along the lines of what we were discussing and bring it back to us, and we can pass it. We could essentially streamline it in a crisis-like situation like this to make it happen a little quicker. It seemed to be misunderstood that that we needed to pass something that night. I mean, we had the details we were ready to present, but we didn't get to because they voted not to even have the discussion on the details. But we'll hear the same thing, the same theme over and over is, you know, kind of a, well, we don't have the details, so we don't know what we'll vote on. Well, we'd have to get to discussion to have to be able to talk about those details. But we'll just start off. We'll kind of go in order in the responses that we got, and then we'll just talk about it a little bit, if that's all right with you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right.
Item, Mr. Lyons.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to oppose this motion. I think the actions that
we took earlier to support a resolution was very important because it helps identify where funding might come from in order to proceed with establishing a policy and paying out hazard pay to our first responders. What bothers me about this is that it's not really following a process. As Councilmember Farasati should understand that something like this as a policy discussion should first be reviewed by staff and assigned to the appropriate standing committee for review and discussion. And that's where I think that this would belong. All we've seen so far from Council members Farasati and Hamlin is a 5-sentence email that went to media that really provided no detailed description nor any kind of draft legislation that we should consider. As I reference back to the resolution that we just voted on a while ago, that resolution was put together by staff with discussion. I credit Councilmember Healy for raising that, and that resulted in some legislation being drafted that was at a state that this council as a whole could consider. At this point, there is nothing to consider. And at best, although I support conceptually the idea of discussing hazard pay, we're in a budget crisis right now, and to actually go forward and I don't know what we would actually do here is what the discussion would be. We'd vote on hazard pay without determining how much money we're talking about, who actually would benefit from this. It's a non-budget item, so there are legal ramifications here and how we could potentially vote on something like this without potentially having a public hearing on adding money to our current 2020 budget and so on. So I'm opposed to this motion. I think it is premature. It needs to be better defined and possibly assigned to a committee that could look at this as a general policy that might apply to other crises that go beyond the coronavirus pandemic right now, and potentially a policy could define what criteria such cases where hazard pay could potentially be paid out to anyone in the city that might be affected by that. So I'm going to oppose the motion. Thank you.
I would just remind the council members that this falls under compensation. That is the responsibility of the city manager. I think we all have stated we support the first responders, all first responders, not just fire and police, but all the first responders out there. But we're talking about something that is the responsibility of our city manager, and that's where this falls. And if you'd like to bring it up through a committee, that would be fine. Further discussion, Mr.
Okay, so there's a whole lot to unpack there, quite frankly. There's the obvious that jumps out at you. About halfway through, he kind of turns his nose up and smirks and says, well, I don't know the details. I mean, what are we going to do? We're going to vote? We're going to talk about it? I have no idea. I don't, who knows? I don't know enough about it. Therefore, I don't want to discuss it. What was the gist of it? But, and maybe you want to discuss some of this too, Dr. Farasati, but just some kind of points that I think were probably more subtle. In the beginning, he talked a little bit about the resolution that we had just passed. That was a resolution. He referred to it as there were discussions. He said that there was legislation drawn up. Interesting enough, that resolution neither went through committee. So that didn't go through committee either. That was put on the agenda by the mayor. The legislation was written by staff. So he's referring to the exact same process that we're trying to use here. And he's praising that as the correct way to go about it. Is there anything you want to add to that before I say anything else?
Thank you. Yeah, you are basically nailing the important points. It's just that when you look at what Councilman Lyons is talking about, and let's remind our audience that Paul Lyon is in charge of the chair of the Public Safety Committee. So by definition, Paul Lyons should be the number one advocate for first responders and the public safety, and should be very knowledgeable in terms of the duties of public safety, what is the definition of a first responder, and what is the job of a committee. And also, again, by the definition of accepting the responsibility of being the chair of the Public Safety Committee, he should be very much knowledgeable in terms of the day-to-day job of a first responder and who is a first responder. When you look at the line of reasoning, majority of it falls on the side of there are so many trees, I can't see the jungle, basically. Basically, he goes through saying that he wants to see the details of this suggestion. Even the first time that we proposed this, the details was very clear. No less than $500 a month, backdated to March 15th until the end of pandemic as stated by the health department of the state of Kansas. Okay. Number two is that we cannot just go ask our legal department to put a resolution together without a discussion, basically. And I told them, and you probably have that clip, that that's putting the cart in front of the horse.
Yeah, and we have that clip coming up where you bring that up publicly and you say, I don't know how you guys got it put together. I suppose it was something the mayor supported, so he had the staff put it together and put it on the agenda. But as council members, we have to. There has to be a discussion in order to. What's the term I'm looking for? In order to advise staff to take our thoughts and draft some legislation.
That's absolutely true. And they call it usually, when we talk about other things, they say, give us a nod, basically. Give us a nod to move forward. Give us an unofficial, marching order to go put the resolution together. And that's all the discussion that we needed to do. And that's what we were trying to get. So they are suffocating this item before even genuinely wanting to discuss it. And that's an issue with a style of governing. When you don't see the importance of an item and you are so much tangled in reasoning, in putting the procedure before the people, in trying to find a procedural maneuver to block a logical discussion in an emergency situation. Scott, that's not the first time we have seen this. We see expedient delivery of items in other matters, such as matters related to TIFs and other things that this administration wants to see to move forward. And then now we are talking about a urgency issue, and all these procedures are being dissected, majority of them in an illogical way, to prohibit discussion over it.
I mean, it's and I've heard it being said about this situation is the $24 trillion mostly dysfunctional federal government managed to get $2 trillion of stimulus out and paid before we can even put a discussion together. So and then I don't know if you saw I think you just had the voice of the last part, but you heard the mayor kind of give some advice at the end, and he said this is a pay situation, so this falls under the job of the city manager, which is one statement, and then he followed up with, unless you want to take it to committee. Well, I don't think taking it to committee changes the job function of the city manager. So just everything we were hearing was confusing. The whole meeting was enough to make your head spin. And we'll see a few more of those as we go along here. Shall I hit the next one?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Sorry, Mayor. Question I had that I heard Councilman Spears, I think, said, and I think this would be for Bill. We cannot add money to the budget at this point. Is that? I heard Councilmember Spears say that. Is that correct?
You cannot. This is Bill Ebel. You cannot exceed budget authority. That takes an action by the city council, and Christy may be able to clarify.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, so that would mean that if we were to take an action tonight, let's just say we had a discussion about a policy, we took a policy which would add hazard pay. That would mean we'd have to cut something from the budget. And I'm kind of curious of what things would have to be cut in order to make this, whatever this number is, because actually I don't have an idea yet of, I can't vote on this because I wouldn't know what the number is I'm voting on. I guess that would be maybe for Bill. What kind of things would need to be cut?
There we go. Back. So there we kind of have the same thing again. It was several things. I don't know if that was a question or a defense that we can't change the budget. Obviously, the answer was yes, of course, the city council can change the budget. And then it went down the same road again of this, well, I don't know what I'd be voting on, so I can't support it. Well, you're never going to know what you're voting on if we don't discuss it. It's just that is not a logical position. And I don't think in any other topic they would ever take that up. Without discussion, of course you don't know whether you're going to what you're going to vote on. I mean, that's the obvious, but so that one was pretty straightforward. Anything to say about that? Or
it's straightforward. It's just I don't want to hear about it, and the reason I don't want to hear about it is that I don't know it. Basically,
right?
Yeah. That defies all the logics or belongs to a new school of logics, which I am not used to. Right. I don't think you are either.
Yeah, no, I don't know the details in advance. Therefore, I reject the discussion is not not a logic I'm familiar with.
Scott, it would not fly in an academic environment or in any place that the basis is supposed to be logics. Basically.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah. So, and that was, you can see the common theme that's kind of coming along here is, well, we don't have all the details, therefore we don't want to discuss it. And that was most of what we heard. And keeping in mind, which you'll see in a video from Ferris here, actually, I believe it's the next one, where he discusses that and he tries to bring the conversation back in. Like, guys, we are talking about, this is a discussion about having a discussion. We're not talking about the merits of the subject. We'll get into that. Of course you don't know about it because we haven't talked about it. Where Dr. Ferrisati actually told him, reined him back in. This is a discussion about a discussion. It's unfair to take shots at the proposal before we've had the discussion. But
I'm simply trying to play the game by their rules.
Right.
We without any reason, we were put to a situation that we need a pre-vote to discuss it. We should never have been in that situation. This should have been an agenda item. But okay, Mayor used his authority to suppress this discussion. Now I am reminding them that whatever opinion you have about this item, this is not the right time, according to your own rules. It's not the right time to shoot this thing down on the basis of merits of it. Right now, the only thing you are discussing is a vote to discuss. So don't go on and on saying, oh, this is bad, this is good. No, just say if you want to discuss it or not. Because I was really hoping, Scott, in all honesty, I was hoping that the fact that they passed that resolution supporting the federal government to pay the first responders would somehow bring them to this conclusion that we need to discuss this. So we were just trying to remind them of their own rules to play the game, and they were not listening.
Right. No, that was so and another thing we ran into, which this one I truly did not expect. I knew just from hearing in the media that we'd been accused of playing politics, like we've seen in this example. they had a resolution for federal money put on the agenda without the 7 votes of the council or without it going to committee, yet ours didn't get put on. So there's a lot of politics. It's easy to accuse other people of playing politics when you can play politics like that behind the scene. And most people know the difference. And so this is where this leads me to the part I really didn't expect. And that was the part where it became strictly untruthful. You know, I knew we were going to, you know, probably hopefully have the discussion, maybe get into some bait there, talk about some details, but I did not expect some of the unfactual statements that were being made. And I'll kind of show that to you now so you can see where that came from.
What I want to make, I just want to piggyback off what was just said there. Just so I understand, in all situations, it takes a vote of 7 to add something to the agenda. Is that correct?
Is legal on here? We'll just make sure we get the correct, Mr. Horner.
I'm on, Mayor. This is
Hi, Tammy.
for non-agenda items, addition of non-agenda items, it is a majority.
Okay. And how about agenda items? What's the process of getting that added?
The mayor dictates what goes on the council agenda. Chair dictates what goes on committee agenda.
Okay. So it's not just a simple fact that it always takes 7 votes to get something on an agenda.
Nope, going to committee it doesn't.
Okay, so what you saw there was me asking just a basic question. I was just asking a straight up question of how does this work? Okay, because we're sitting there being told that it has to go through committee or you have to bring it up as a non-agenda item. We got told that over and over. So I straight up asked, and I got you saw the name Tammy Owens come up there. That's a attorney that was there that night, and she gives a straightforward answer that yes, for non-agenda item it takes 7 votes. Otherwise, the mayor sets the agenda, or in a committee, the chairman sets the agenda. And then you saw the mayor try and chime in there with as long as it goes through committee, which is not exactly factual. I think we lost you there, Ferris.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. There was, since we did go to that one, is there anything you want to say about that? I am going to go ahead while I got you there, and I've already
absolutely
fumbled
right.
around. I'm going to go ahead and find the video that led up to that one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's just while you are finding the video is that it's almost like for us is one set of rules, and for the supporters of the mayor is another set of rules, so to speak. It's almost like everything, pieces from heaven and earth, are being pulled together to not allow this discussion to happen, which I have a philosophical disagreement with a body of elected officials rejecting to discuss something. That's the job. That's why we got elected, is to discuss policies. One reason after the other reason, none of them justified and none of them valid that we should not have this discussion. And this is the second time. Let me remind everybody, all the audience here, that this is the second time that we see this behavior, April 6th and April 20th.
Right. And so I did find the video, which led up to me asking that direct question, because there was a back and forth between Dr. Farasati and Mayor Gerlach, which led to me asking that question. So let me share that with you of what that back and forth was. So here should come the share screen.
With all due respect to the committees, we fully understand the function of committees, but it is within my legal rights and Councilman Hamblin job and my job to bring it to the council. Now, if the council is going to discuss it and let it go on the agenda, is the authority of the mayor. So please don't stop lecturing me on the fact that this has to go through the committee, because that's not true. I encourage you to check that with our legal department. I checked a while ago. The other item is that it's just what we are hearing here, and I usually don't defend myself in terms of these kind of like comments of this is campaigning or this is A and B and C. Let's put it in the picture. Call it campaigning, call it political, call it whatever you want to call it. That doesn't take your duty to put your opinion on the table about what is being proposed. Let's say I am the most political person in the world. That doesn't take your duty away from conversating and discussing about the item that I propose. Those are all extras. Let's see the jungle. What are we talking about? I mean, I'm absolutely amazed. We are diluting the problem by saying that the grocery store workers deserve it, and this group of people deserve it, and that group of people deserve it. To the best of my knowledge, City of Overland Park doesn't employ grocery store employees. Let's take care of our own people. And yes, of course, we agree that they deserve it, but we are talking about something that is within our jurisdiction. Also, why did we pass a resolution to the federal government if we don't support this discussion right now? I humbly ask you, what is the logical correlation if a citizen comes and tells me, why did you support a federal legislation in the spirit of this thing when you are not gonna even argue and discuss over this item? It just amazes me. You might be against it. I am not trying to change your opinion to be against it, but walking down the discussion is absolutely illogical. And again, I see the landscape here, and I don't know if you guys really think that I am trying to score political scores here. I will take my motion back and I let one of you guys take credit for it. I don't know how to put myself out of this and focus your attention on the first responders. That they are emailing us saying that they have difficulty managing their finances, their alternative sources of income, the after hours incomes that they have has been cut. The other jurisdictions, let me ask you this question. Are you telling me that we are the only jurisdiction that cannot pass something on an emergency basis, and a number of other jurisdictions were allowed to do that? We are talking about a viral pandemic. We are talking about a national emergency. We are talking about something which people compare to almost the level of intensity and urgency of back when Pearl Harbor was attacked. But what I'm trying to say is that don't put the procedure that you could resolve as an excuse not to do it. And one more time, not to get your time too much, and we don't need agitation, none of us needs agitation, but I humbly ask you to allow the discussion, and then we get to the meat of it, we get to the details of it. So don't even simply wash it out, throw the baby with the bathwater when we are not supposed to talk about the merits of the resolution. Yes, we can discuss about that. And how am I going to ask our legal department to put a policy together when the body of the elected officials is not even moving forward with the discussion? I asked them, they are like, you can't, Paris, you cannot ask for us ad hoc to go and put together a resolution that you don't know even if it's going to be allowed to discuss or not, which is very, very logical. I guess in all honesty, and with just dropping all the peripheries that don't apply, all the other reasons, one more time, I attract your attention to the fact that we need to discuss it, and we are elected to discuss those policies. Never existed before, a new thing. Let's discuss it. Thank you.
Mr. Fersati, I get at least, you've criticized the council for discussing this item, but I would say based on the time frame, you have spent much more time tonight discussing this item than anybody else has, so I would be careful of your criticism of your council members. The other comment I would have is if you want if you want to have the discussion, what's wrong? Why haven't you brought it up through committee? Mr. Thompson has already taken one item that you asked to go on the committee, and he said, sure, I'd be happy to discuss it. What is your concern? What is your problem with bringing it through committee like council members? Otherwise, you need 7 votes to get something on the agenda. It's nobody, you've mentioned the mayor has restricted you from putting things on the agenda. That is untrue. You have the ability to put things on the agenda, but you must have 7 votes to put it on the agenda. Either that or put it, take it through committee, and Mr. Thompson would sure
Mayor,
let you have
the legal
discussion.
channel for it
Hey, excuse
exists.
me, sorry.
I was trying to use that.
Okay, so there was a lot there. I mean, you summed up a lot. I put that in part in there because you saw, obviously you got scolded for talking about the details that the rest of the council talked about without any interruption. And then you got your mic cut for disagreeing with him about the avenue existing for him to add it to the agenda. I mean, obviously it does exist because they had just used it 15 minutes earlier. But do you want to talk about any of the other points you made? You made great, so, obviously a lot of great points in there about, we can't ad hoc legislation put together, kind of what we've been talking about the whole time, but, talking about the actual item instead of the discussion. But anyway, I'll turn it over to you and let you kind of say what you want to.
I just, I think, again, maybe I was a little bit excited, more than average on that night, but I just really wanted to attract their cooperation to discuss this. And you will see that the mayor, in a very not well-connected manner, is trying to throw everything from his authority to set the agenda to the legalistics approaching this, and also to the fact that, you can put it on the agenda, but you need 7 votes, but then you can't put it on the agenda. It's my job. You just don't get a clear picture. The only clear message from that is that I don't want to let this thing be discussed, and I'm doing my best not to let it have a discussion about it. Otherwise, and also if a few things, Scott, you saw it. So all of these other jurisdictions could resolve this and move on with it, and we couldn't. We are the only ones who knows the law.
Right.
The other issue is that what was that reasoning about the budget? First of all, we have a $50 million reserve fund. This thing is going to cost us, if we ever get to discuss it, it's going to be a few $100,000. It's going to be well below $1 million. So yeah. Reserve funds are reserve funds. So let's not play games with that.
The argument that, we're either going to have to cut funds somewhere or spend reserve funds is common sense. I mean, that's no different in your personal finances. If you want to buy something, you're going to have to make the decision if you want to pay for it out of your checking or your savings. I mean, I don't even see that as an argument. That's math. Yeah, and then I got the videos backwards, but because Dr. Fersati had his mic cut while he was advising the mayor that it does exist and that 7 votes isn't required to get something on the agenda. That is why I immediately asked afterward the question about how do you get non-agenda items, which is 7 votes, and how you get agenda items, which is the key on the agenda. And you saw that the attorneys clearly stated, well, the mayor controls what goes on the agenda. So had the mayor wanted it to be on the agenda, it would have been on the agenda. It was a straight answer. I mean,
we are saying we don't like this item because we don't know the details, but we are not going to discuss it to know the details. And it should have gone on the agenda, but the mayor didn't let it on the agenda. And also, we are being told, it's regular parliamentary procedure. When you refer to somebody by name, they have a right to provide an answer back. And all I'm commenting is that the legal avenue for it exists, and I get my mic cut. So where are the set of rules that we could hang our hat on at the end of the day?
Right. And as Dr. Fersati said, at this point in the meeting, it's later, a little bit later in the discussion. We're obviously both getting a little excited. This is a subject we've been emotional about. We've been trying our hardest. It's been thrown back at us and the first responders that we're playing politics. It's not the case. We have a group of constituents that are reaching out to us for help. We believe in what they're asking for, and we're advocating to the absolute best of our ability to help them, which is a video that I'll play you now that I think I spoke right after Dr. Fersati, and you can see the same thing. You can tell that, I'm getting pretty excited and emotional at the same time, but
You have to.
yeah, it was pretty hard not to with the reasonings we were hearing. The discussion was getting off topic of what it was supposed to be. We were, the public was being misled about how the agenda works. It was a frustrating, definitely a frustrating meeting.
And Councilman, it's the second time we see this movie. That was a little
exactly, yeah.
Also a little bit more difficult. It's just you see a bad movie and you just move on. And it's the second time, same reasoning, same procedural blockade, same, I don't want to hear about it. And at some point it gets to you. And we are talking about first responders who have reached you and have reached me and their families with very, very emotional cases. And then we are talking about lip service. We absolutely support thoughts and prayers, but don't ask money from me. Do not ask a penny from me, basically. It's a worn out scenario. And I think our people have moved nationally well beyond thoughts and prayers and no actions.
Yeah.
In many different scenarios.
And you've seen a lot of the emails too. I've gotten emails from officers, from first responders, their wives talking about their 18-month-old children, afraid of what their husband's going to bring home. Is it life-threatening? Is it life-threatening to the family? They lost their pay raise. They've lost their alternative forms of income because a lot of them will do security type jobs. That's not there.
That we ordered. May I remind you, we ordered the city of Overland Park.
Right.
Ordered the police officers that we can do that you cannot go stand guard at a jewelry store to make some extra money because we might need you. And we ordered them, we cut their inflation adjustment, we cut the step raise that they will get every year. They move up the ladder, they get a step raise. We cut the inflation adjustment, and we also cut their alternative source of potentially making money. 3 hits on our first responders.
Right. And that's all been discussed with us, and it's why we're so passionate about it. So I got 2 more videos, and that's really it. The next one is what I said after Dr. Fersati spoke, and then I'll play you one that kind of wrap things up, and then we'll talk about where it goes from here.
Right.
Okay. The other thing I want to say is what I said before. I said, this idea, and it was brought up tonight. We all know it's been brought up in the media. It's the elephant in the room. This idea that this is political. The fact that we're advocating for a valid cause that you guys just voted unanimously as a valid cause. The fact that we're advocating for that, and like I said, time is of the essence. This is where we can really step in and do something. The fact that because we're advocating to do this in a timely fashion and hope that maybe the feds pay it back. But the fact that we're advocating strongly for our first responders, and that's politics. We're playing politics. That's, you're shooting the messenger. They're finding that very offensive. I'm sure you've seen the emails that, all we're doing is passing their message, and they're getting written off as politics. And that's, so what we just passed unanimously, was that not politics? So I just wanted to say that I can't encourage everyone enough to just for tonight, at least, put aside the fact that, you know, oh, well, this is just politics, because we're advocating for some of our own employees that have reached out to us for help. Put aside the fact for a moment that it's politically engineered. I, for one, am not running for anything. So, you know, I didn't propose a pay raise for myself. If it helped, we could give up ours and give it to them, whatever. But so there's nothing self-serving. I think that was a term thrown out about it. I don't even know what that would mean in this situation. Anyways, long story short, I think we owe it, like I said, in the spirit of supporting our first responders, to have the discussion about implementing this policy.
Okay, so there's kind of what I had to say. You know, the gist of the story being, stop shooting the messenger. That is all Dr. Ferrisati and I are. We are the messengers, and it's been told to both of us that the first responders find it offensive that we take the exact their exact issue, their exact ask, and we advocate for it, and we get called politics. And that you know, that reflects on them. They look at that as saying, oh, so what we're asking for is just politics. You know, it is what it is. So you can tell, obviously, it's something we feel passionate about. That's why we've stuck with it. I'll play one last video, and this is kind of how it ended. And this was, again, another shocking moment for me.
But if I may add just one thing, is that
yeah,
we are politicians. You know, politician by definition of dictionary is somebody who establishes policies, basically. So, I mean, this childish brand that you are playing politics and you are doing that, okay, that, again, one more time, does not take your responsibility away from you to discuss it. Okay, discuss it and then give your reasons that there is no merits to it. But you just can't avoid discussion because you are labeling somebody with, you know, playing politics. It's worn out. These kind of things have been tried so many times in Washington and by politicians, by professional politicians, that it's just worn out. Merit, logics, evidence-based attitude. If you have something to say, bring it on. Let's have the discussion. That's all we were asking.
right. Exactly. So I'll play the last one, and then, like I said, we'll discuss about where we go from here. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things. First, I'm kind of disappointed that we sent a crystal clear message, I think it was on the 6th, that we thought this would be most appropriate going through committee, and action didn't take place. And I think that message is somehow getting missed, that I don't think we have a problem with discussing it. We just want to go through the appropriate process. And second, I would move the question.
Okay, so what happened there? He moved to question. That means discussion over. It's time to vote whether we're going to proceed in that. But before that happened, he made the comment that, well, what was it? That he was disappointed, which I found it quite offensive, to be honest with you. This is the council president, and he says, I find it awfully disappointing that we made it crystal clear on the last meeting that this needs to go to a committee. I went back to the tape. Anybody can, it's on the line. There was never any discussion whatsoever out of anyone's mouth on April 6th. It was a completely different proposal. At that time, we were talking about reversing the pay raise. It was never mentioned that that should go through committee. It was mentioned that that was not part of our job and that we shouldn't provide our input to the city managers. So I don't know if that was a political move or if his recollection just fails him there. But that was just absolutely incorrect. And that's, like I said, a few of the things that just took me back in this meeting was, I knew there was going to be some probably heated discussion, but unfactual information is further than I expected it to go. Other than that, so after that, we took the vote. Obviously, it failed 2-9, I think it would be, with us wanting to move on to the discussion. And well, actually, there had to be 2 votes. We had to discuss whether to keep discussing the discussion, and then we had to vote if we were going to have the discussion. So we didn't even get to keep having the discussion on whether we were going to have a discussion or not. So before we talk about where this is heading next, you got anything, Dr. Ferrasati?
No, I think you said it perfectly. Mr. Spears put the nail in the coffin in his eternal wisdom and compared us to a non-existing scenario back there.
Yeah.
Basically, the rest jumped on the opportunity to stop the discussion on the discussion.
Right. So anyway, that is how we got to where we are now. So it was clear that they're not willing. And like I said, in one of the video that you saw of me talking was, this is our chance to do something. This is where leaders can stand up and lead. And that's a big opportunity we missed. We could have that night hashed some things out, sent the staff to put it into the legislative form, and then we'd have something to pass next time. But now we've gone into this holding pattern, delay tactic, whatever you want to call it. So that left us no choice but to send it through committee. So at this point on Monday night, Wednesday night. It'll be next Wednesday.
I believe Wednesday, May 6th.
Right. And so that'll go through the finance committee, where the same discussions will happen. This time it'll be on the agenda, so there will be a discussion about it. So that part is good. The most likely outcome, I would guess, in that is that exactly what we could have done Monday is we could come up with something that we could tell staff to work on and bring back to the council to pass. So if we got that far, that would be fantastic. Or it could die right there in discussions. But at least this time, I think we're going to get more opinions and less delay
maneuvers. Less maneuvers.
Yeah, less maneuvers and less, saying this because you don't want to say that type stuff.
Yeah,
so
less stonewalling, hopefully.
Right. Yeah. So that's really all we had to talk about. I think that kind of gives you an idea of where we stand, where the process is at. We hope you support doing this for our first responders. A lot of other cities, municipalities have done it. I think it's something they deserve, especially in light of the other financial situation we have put them in. Other than that, like I said, you can see that, you can listen to that Wednesday night. And Ferris, got any final words of wisdom before
I can be discussed to discuss things.
Yeah.
At the end, we'll see, basically, if the outcome of this thing, anybody taking credit for it would be to do what is right. We welcome that. We welcome logics. We welcome collaboration. We do not have time for, procedural maneuvers and stonewalling and bringing up items that are irrelevant. At some point, one of these council members, my dear colleague Jim Kite, was saying that, what about grocery store employees? Well, you heard that Mr. Lyons was referring to passing a policy that talks about everybody in the city. Like, let's just, either we are completely unaware of our jurisdiction, or what are these reasonings? Grocery store employees, my heart goes to them, but they're not employees of the city. Having a policy that goes citywide for everybody, that's outside our jurisdiction. Let's stick to the point. I mean, I cannot just believe that there's this level of unfamiliarity with the procedure involved, with the, with what we are trying to achieve here. And then we are being lectured by the same people. And usually the line is that you should know this. And, it's just pushing it back and pushing it back. Okay, we are going to be at the administration. I filed at Finance and Administration Committee. As you said, I encourage everybody to email governingbody@opkansas.org. That email goes to the whole governing body and encourage your support, provide your support for this hazard pay item to be passed without delay on a stat order, to use doctor's term, fast order. We just don't want to be in a situation that the pandemic is over and we are still discussing this. They need help right now. Other jurisdictions, without needing to procedure this thing to death, they did it. Kansas City, Missouri, over $10 million increased in public safety budget, and another $850,000 approved by the council for the public safety. Sedgwick County, isn't it? And
yeah.
Today in the news was that Wichita is not going to touch the pay of the first responders. Even Johnson County did not touch the pay of the first responders. We hit them 3 times in this. Right. This is the same economy. Whatever happens to them happens to us. Let's go beyond delay tactics. Let's go beyond words. Let's put the action together. And our mutual request was to backdate it to March 15th. The burden is a few $100,000. It's not going to be more than a few $100,000. The math is clear. What is not clear is the intention. We have a chairman of the Public Safety Committee, Paul Lyons, who says the job of these first responders is not that much different from before because they deal with hazard situations anyways. We have emails sent to the families essentially threatening them with layoffs if they ask for hazard pay. These are not necessary. These are not productive. A conclusion to this should come from an intelligent and fact-based discussion, and the facts are going to be medical facts here. Budget concerns are there. There is no question in that, but we have a $50 million reserve fund, and it's the rainy day right now. It does not get rainier than this. Viral pandemic, no treatment, no vaccine. I assure you as a virologist, this is as rainy as it gets. So I hope that our last effort at Finance and Administration Committee will be fruitful. One more time, please, if you find this $500 a month as we propose to be something just for first responders, please email governing body at opkansas.org or call or talk to your council members and encourage them. And some of them just encourage them to say something at least. Some of my colleagues their silence is deafening, and I would like to know what they think. I would like to know. As a colleague, I would like to know, and as a resident of Overland Park, I would like to know what they think. Let's not be silent anymore.
Yeah, this is that's been surprising me too. On a 12 or 11, now that we have a vacancy, council panel, the main discussion has probably come from maybe about 5 people doing most of the talking, and the rest have been just deafeningly silent, as Dr. Ferrasati put. And this is the time to, as I keep saying, this is the time to lead. This is a time to stand up for what you believe in, for those beliefs that people voted for you for. It's time to be an elected leader. And so far we haven't made it far down that path, but there's still some hope that maybe we can get that turned around this Wednesday. So other than that, we really have nothing else for you at this point. Hope we didn't bore you too long. I don't think Steven Spielberg's in too much jeopardy of me taking his job. So I apologize for all my mishaps trying to manage this Zoom. That's all we got. And I thank you for tuning in, and thank you for your support. And like Ferris said, email, and let's get the rest of the council involved.
Scott, I think you did fantastic. I think you should make the next Avatar movie. And I think we will give everybody an update after the May 6th Wednesday, and I hope that we will have good news. We like to have good news. We don't like to have bad news.
Let's have a happy one of these
and
next week after Wednesday.
Yeah, and also a fast and expedient action. Basically, let's not let the coronavirus become a non-topic before we vote this thing in.
Right.
Let's be faster than this pandemic in terms of supporting our first responders. Thank you very much, Councilman Hamblin. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Dr. Fersati, for joining us. And like you said, we will be doing another one of these shortly, and hopefully keep you guys informed. As always, if we're doing these through Zoom right now. Normally we hold it in a town hall type setting. If there are any topics that you'd like to discuss, reach out to us, because we enjoy doing these. We enjoy interacting with the residents, getting their feedback, their opinion. And so please reach out to us. Tell us a topic. If you want to join in on the discussion with us, we'd more than welcome that. So reach out to us and let us know what you want to hear, what's on your mind, what your thoughts are. And thank you very much for watching.
If I may add, the YouTube channel, again, thanks to Councilman Hamblin, is called Overland Park Conversation Series. Am I right?
That's correct.
And all of these video clips, after being premiered on Facebook, is going to be available on Overland Park Conversation Series on YouTube. If you like it, please subscribe to it. All of them are going to be libraried there. We did not add or edit any of the video clips that we showed you. You can just go there, take a look at those video clips, and make your own judgment. And we welcome to know your opinion. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.